Welcome to University of Illinois, Illinois Sustainable Technology Center here. We're part of the Prairie Research Institute. It's one of the largest institutes on campus, comprising the Geological Survey, the Water Survey, the Archaeological Survey, and the Natural History Survey, and then there's our facility. We're not a survey by name, but we are a survey. At ISTC, there are three groups. We have the R&D, they do applied research. We have a outreach and training group, and then we have a technical assistance program. And these three programs have a joint mission of reducing pollution prevention, conserving our natural resources, basically to create a better environment in Illinois and beyond. Being that we're part of the Technical Assistance Program, and that's what the group that is hosting this event today here, just to quickly go through them, our generic process follows is a number of steps here where we have initial contact with a facility or client. Then we discuss what their needs are, what's important to them, not necessarily what our agenda is, but what's the client's agenda. Then we go on site with one of our engineering staff, and we do a tour, discuss their needs there. We do a site visit. We write reports that identify some of those recommendations. Then we present that with them. We go in and develop some baselines, and we work with them to facilitate implementation and progress towards some of those recommendations we identified. And then we document and compile and track results. So one of our programs in TAP, we like acronyms. Everybody has acronyms. It's Illinois Conservation of Resources and Energy. We call it just ICOR. The goal or the objective of ICOR is to provide on-site technical assistance to Illinois food and beverage manufacturers to reduce water and energy, greenhouse gas emissions, hazardous waste, and materials. And bottom line is to save money for the business. We receive funding to do this from US EPA Office of Pollution Prevention, Region 5. You can see some of the states there, part of Region 5. And ICOR is very well suited for the EPA's National Emphasis Area number 2, which is providing technical assistance to food and beverage manufacturers and processors. Some of our measures for the ICOR project is we track energy in form of kilowatts and therms, water, in gallons, hazardous waste and materials, greenhouse gas emissions, that's metric tons of CO2, that's what that stands for, and then dollar saved for our clients. Our target sector for 2018 and 2019, and this is one of my favorite slides. This is what I consider the 5 basic food groups, as you can tell. The only thing missing here that I can see are the fries. So we have donuts, we have hamburgers and cookies and sodas and shakes and all that good stuff. So the food and beverage sectors is our focus for the next couple years and maybe beyond. So today's topic will be, for my segment, will be to looking at opportunities to reduce your environmental footprint and save money. That's most dear to most of us, is saving money. What do we typically see and recommend when we go out to provide our technical assistance in the field? You're going to hear some acronyms today. I will use them. E2 is for energy efficiency, P2 is for pollution prevention. So here again, those acronyms. Looking at just some of the technologies that we typically see and recommend, lighting is one of the biggest areas that we witness. LED is here. It's been here for a number of years, but far as for it being economically viable in the manufacturing setting and warehouses and production areas, it's here. It is the standard now. So if you still have facilities that don't have LED, this is a great opportunity. In I-Core, over the last 2 years, 69% of all the savings we implemented for our clients has been LED. And I just want to point out a couple things here. This is not photoshopped here. That's high pressure sodium. I don't think anybody really wants to work in that conditions. This is a nice bright area. That's where I'd rather work. And then over here, you're going to notice in most of the slides, look for the little oval that has the red border and says utility incentives. Generally speaking, there's a lot of utility incentives that Ameren, Mid-American Energy, and ComEd, and Nicor Gas, and Peoples Gas provide to their customers in their service territories to implement these improvements. And it's by law, by the way, so they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. And I'm not bashing Ameren here, so, but it is a statutory legislation that went in 2008. So it's a long-standing program, but still, I go out to customers and they do not know about the Ameren Energy Efficiency Program or the ComEd. It's brand new. So we try to make our clients aware of these incentives. Moving on to motors. Motors are your largest energy users across the country. That is the largest category. And I don't think most of us drive with both feet, one on the pedal and one on the gas and one on the brake. My grandpa did, and I mean, if you're 90, you might, if you're still driving. But we operate our motors, our blowers, pumps, and fans in this very same fashion. It's not unusual for us to walk into a facility and see a pump or a blower running wide open, but downstream of it, there's usually some kind of a throttling or a mechanism, a valve or damper. That's money. That's money, 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 money every day of the week. So that's low-hanging fruit. If you were to open up that valve, let's say it was closed just 20%. If you open up that valve 100% and you put a variable frequency drive in there and slowing that motor down, matching that speed of the motor and of the pump or of the blower to the load that is usually ever changing, that's why you got the valves on there. 20% reduction of flow, if you can see that right here, will yield almost a 50% energy savings. So it's not unusual for us to see valves 50% back. A 50% reduction of flow will yield you almost an 87% reduction in power. So that's huge. Looking at compressed air, we typically look at air as a fourth utility. It's the most expensive utility in a facility. Behind, you got electricity, gas, and water. Compressed air, we treat that as a separate category. We track it as a separate category. So we look at a systems approach, how it's being generated, how it's being stored, how it's being distributed, how it's being used. So bottom line, and there's incentives there, so look at that little, I don't know if you can see it, but there's incentive bubble there. Get an air study. There are incentives out there. Ameren provides monies for air studies. So this is an example of an air study, just one page. I redacted it, so there's no names up there, of a food manufacturer. One of our assessments that we brought an air professional in. At this facility, they were wasting 20% of their air due to leaks in one building and 39% in another building. Combining those two buildings, by fixing their leaks, they saved $15,000, and they got paid for that. Process cooling. If you have process cooling, cooling towers are energy hogs every day of the week. They're energy hogs. It's not unusual to see large two-speed fans on a cooling tower, multiple 25, 50, I've seen 200, I've seen 300 horsepower supply pumps, and sometimes they're combating each other, and they're being brought online, going to a common header, whether it's, usually they're running wide open in the summer because you can't get enough cooling capacity in the hot summer days here in Illinois, but in the fall, spring, and winter, they may be running one, then have to run two, then have to run three. variable frequency drives are great opportunities to add infinite number of fan speeds and motor combinations. So you may be running 2 at a half speed. And it also has load balancing capability, so they're not fighting each other, especially if they're going to a common header. Utility incentives are available as well for cooling towers, for VFDs. Now, this is not a picture of anybody's cooling tower here in this room, but it is a food manufacturer. How not to operate your cooling tower. You see there's, I'm not sure if you can see everything here, but I'm just going to point one thing here. There's, in this picture, you've got ice build up there, you've got algae growing in there. That right here, you've got the fill that's deteriorating. It's actually falling down into the bed. It's actually going downstream into their chillers, plugging up lines, really causing problems there. You have broken louvers there, and you got a lot of corrosion. So they're having some chemistry issues there, obviously. Looking at process heating, boilers are a huge opportunity for waste energy recovery and or just efficiency in general. And Ameren and ComEd and NICOR, they all have incentives for various aspects of efficiency when it comes to boiler. Just to throw out a couple of things here on the slide here, things like boiler tune-ups, oxygen trim, combustion air preheating, high efficiency burners, an economizer that would preheat your incoming water with exhausted fumes, taking energy off of the stack and bring it into your process. Even combustion air preheating the air coming into combustion. If you can raise your combustion air 80 degrees, you can increase efficiency roughly 1%, which is significant for boilers. Refrigeration, it's all about controlling air infiltration. Has to do with the size of your opening, the temperature differential between the rooms, pressure differential, whether it's negative or positive, but controlling air infiltration is a significant opportunity. There are incentives for refrigeration studies. And I'm just throwing out some things here. You probably have these in your facilities. You have air curtains, strip curtains, high-speed roll-up doors instead of standard roll-up doors, so that way you're minimizing that air exchange that you don't want to have. Looking at some simple things on HVAC, if you condition your air year-round, now you've got a huge opportunity for year-round savings. That would be to look at a heat wheel. They're called also enthalpy wheels, where you're actually conditioning your incoming air through a series of air-to-air exchangers. You're conditioning incoming air with exterior, with your exhaust air. Good opportunity there. The first time I used the word big ass on a fan, someone kind of took note of that and kind of challenged me, thought I was swearing, but everybody knows that big ass is one of the premier high volume, low speed fans in the market. You've got a number of other companies out there, Wright, Height, Patterson. Big ass is a catchy name. The ones up on the top right, that's a zoo fan. So if you have obstructions in the way, these are good ways of destratifying that air. Pair, there's zoo fan, there's also pair air. Patterson is a high speed, high volume fan. Most of these systems, their goal is to obviously make your facility more comfortable for your employees, but also save energy. And you get rid of a lot of those pedestal fans, which are real eyesore, trip hazards, and everybody's got pedestal fans. This is one way, or several ways of reducing that number in your facility. So real quick and easies. I still see these. I was at a facility just the other day, and they had a number of these static digital or dial thermostats controlling space 24/7 at the same temperature. So it's real quick and easy to change out a thermostat, put a programmable, this picture here is a programmable smart thermostat with temperature setback. We don't say go crazy, go 6, 8 degrees in the off hours. For every 1 degree you set back a temperature, you're looking at saving 2 to 3% of energy. That's significant for a $25 or $40 thermostat. They're not very expensive. So this is a tribute to the old days with Alec Trebek and Jeopardy. Potpourri for 600. Everything adds up when you're looking at energy efficiency. A lot of small stuff here. So occupancy controls, whether it's a wall switch or personal power strip down the middle, or a vending machine, or it's called a vending miser. Those are real quick, simple, easy devices. Tankless water heaters or point-of-use water heaters are another way of saving energy. You also have high-frequency battery chargers, and most of these are incentivized through the various utilities. So moving on to water conservation and wastewater. Water's precious. I like this little analogy that I came across, that if you were to put all the water of the world in 1 gallon jug, you'd have 1 tablespoon of that jug, of that gallon, would be available fresh water. So the bottom line, water's not cheap. We hear that all the time, water's cheap, water's cheap, water's cheap. It really isn't. It's a precious resource that we need to treat that way. So what should we do? First step, turn off the water. I've been in facilities that water's running, nobody's there, and they said, well, someone turns it on in the morning and someone turns it off at night. Why? It's just the way it is. So turn off the water, fix the leaks. There's pictures here of streaming. That's a food manufacturer here. This is a food manufacturer. You have all these sanitary fittings. They're finicky. If you don't put them together right, or they wear, they leak. So fix the leaks. That'd be the first thing, obviously. And then reduce the flow on other uses. So the top left, that's a green pre-rinse nozzle. You reduce your water roughly 80%. You're using pressure versus volume of water. Rotary impingement spray heads, that's a Gamma Jet. I'm not selling products here, so I'm just going to throw some names out there so we don't endorse any manufacturer product or service, but this is just to give you a point of reference. Looking at low flow products, whether it's aerators on your sinks or dual valve flush on your toilets. In our restrooms, they're fitted with the dual valve flush toilet here, so we're practicing what we're preaching here. Looking at technology called conductivity control. How many of us in the morning get up and walk into our kitchen, turn on the water, fix our coffee, leave the water run, fix our breakfast, leaving the water run, wash your dishes off, and you walk away leaving the water run. Then you come back at lunchtime, do the same, and then you come back at dinner time doing the same. It's running the whole time. Then you go to bed. You say, oh, I need to turn off that water. Turn off the water. We don't do that at home, but yet it's very common we do that at our facilities, where we have water running continuously overflowing, and without any kind of control. This system here actually monitors your water's cleanliness according to whatever preset conditions you program into it, and sends information to the solenoid on the right-hand side, which will then bring in water to clean up your bath. Eliminating single-pass water. Yes, we do still see single-pass water being used, especially in air compressors, water-cooled compressors, hydraulic equipment, condensers. Rather than using single pass, we recommend some kind of a closed loop system. Reject, using reject RO. RO is very expensive water. You reject a lot of water to make 1 gallon of RO. So we look at opportunities not only to increase the efficiency, in other words, changing the filters and making sure it's running efficiently as possible, but then also looking at the reject, what are you using for reject. So if you're using fresh water to irrigate or your landscape, this may be an opportunity there. Things like roof cooling, that may be an option as well. Floor scrubbers, non-contact process water. All these are opportunities to reuse that, get another use for that water. It's all about getting another use if possible. Moving on quickly to environmental health and safety stuff. This is some things we see. Now, none of these here pictures are any of your facilities, but there's some things that are wrong in this picture. Okay, you've got e-waste here in this. That would make a fire marshal cringe because you've got a paper exit sign. What if you're on third shift and and you need to get out, an emergency? How and the lights go out? What are you going to use? Your cell phone to get out? That's not a good choice. And Lord help you to get to a fire extinguisher in the case of a fire. There's stuff stacked in a zone that is marked. Do not stack stuff here, but yet the stuff is there. So that's not optimum. And then you've got mercury-containing bulbs here, just kind of haphazardly thrown in a box. Those have to be recycled by the Illinois Universal Waste Law, by the way. If you're noting in these pictures here, you've got blowdown from the air compressor, which has oil in it, staining the ground here. This is actually a drain right out in the wide open. Anybody can see that. Those are issues. And then these are air guns that people have modified, either brought it in from home or taken on their own self to modify the guns they were given. And they're basically open tubes, which are not OSHA compliant. They're not safe for a number of reasons: air injection, noise. We recommend instead using high efficiency safety guns, which they pass your OSHA gauge tests. They cut noise down roughly 50%, and they also save between roughly 20 to 30% energy. So those are good options. If you're a tanglefoot like me, I don't know if you can tell this, but these are nice snares. There's a bunch of banding material. There's up here, there's a nice cord going across, and over here, that's a crater. That's a nice place to twist your ankle. So those are things we just, here again, we're not compliance people. We're a non-compliance group here. So we're not here. We're not OSHA. We're not the police here to hammer, but we identify those things to help you. Because you'd rather hear it from a friend, wouldn't you? I definitely would. And we all know that flammable cabinets are great places to store your coats. I mean, that's the #1 use for them here at this facility. And you might store some flammables in there, but, and then they've got a number of drums that are open at this facility. Here again, this was a food manufacturer, and there's a floor drain here. So there's no spill containment. Who knows what's in these drums? Well, we know what's in the drum, but it could be anything. Go down the drain, and who knows what's in that? There's a red stuff that looks like transmission fluid. It's not transmission fluid, but right now, it's anybody's guess. It's not labeled. Looking at material utilization, waste reduction, use all the material that you're paying for. It's not uncommon for us to go to facilities and see product in the can, and it's going into the trash or landfill. So you're paying good money for it. Use it as much as you can, and then get rid of the empty bucket. This is a product called Spin Out. We saw that, one of our guys saw that at a facility up in Chicago. They were using these to get peanut butter out of 5-gallon buckets. So that would be a tough job if you had to do it by hand. You put the buckets over this contraption upside down, spin it, twist it, and it comes out. Nice and clean containers. And that's a nice little technology there. Ice pigging, rather than a solid pigging. This is coming aboard. Mike Springer ran across this last year or two, where you're actually recovering product, you're cleaning your lines out this ice slurry, which scrubs and cleans and moves your product out so you can recover it. But more importantly, it makes all the bends. So if you have 90 degrees or other sharp, tight bends, valves, ice will go through that, where solid pigs would have an issue with that. So you're reducing your water use to clean out these lines, and it may also impact your surcharges for BOD and other items that you may be charged by your POTW. We had a summer intern that I-Corps funded that looked at the one area in the packaging, and they were using 2 strips of hot glue, linear strips on every flap. Well, she found a machine that would just stitch it with little dots, reduce the amount of glue by 25%, and had less than a year payback. So that was a nice little source reduction, pollution prevention technique there. Diverting waste from landfill. Obviously, you see items in this picture that are erroneously placed in containers. You've got products that can be reclaimed, recycled, but are not currently. Not unusual for us to see whole cans of product that have been canned, sealed, going to the landfill. This is a product, I've never witnessed this, but we ran across this. I'd love to see someone use this. But it decans, it punctures a can, crushes a can, so it separates the product. I think this case is tomato paste. This is just a stock photo. And allows the product to be recovered for animal feed and allows the metal to be recycled. And just wrapping up real quickly, how do we do what we do? What our methodology is. We work at the, most of the time and effort is working in the areas of source reduction, pollution prevention. Then we work down the inverted pyramid, triangle there, to recycling and composting, energy recovery, and then last and least of our time and attention would be your treatment and disposal. I typically call disposal the antichrist of pollution prevention. Understanding the process. We're not experts, you know your product and process much better than we do, but we just use a process called process mapping, where we're looking at a step, what's coming in, and documenting what's going out, the inputs and the outputs. And then we say, well, what's the next step? What happens next? Inputs, outputs. What happens next? Input, outputs. And our TAP group, I'm just going to highlight a few of these thumbnails here. We work at the intersection of industry and government and business to be more sustainable, and we try to help business and the community be more resilient and competitive. Some of the assessments we provide, we call a comprehensive assessment. It is a customized assessment. I'm going to highlight some words here that focus upon your processes to reduce energy, water, you're minimizing your carbon footprint, increasing productivity, some lean things there, and drive innovation. Waste characterization, zero waste. We have a zero waste program that Shantanu Pai, you'll be hearing from him later in the next segments down. They'll be talking a little bit more about that. But they do waste audits to look at ways of reducing your waste streams. Water efficiency and conservation, where and how you're using your water. Institutional water treatment. Mike Springman heads that group up. He will be talking about that in the next segment. Implementation. We work with companies and assisting them with ISO 14,000, your environmental management system assistance. We try to get technologies, equipment in the factory, in the hands of the users as much as possible, because it takes the scare or demystifies some technologies we can get actually there at facilities. And then finally, I'm going to highlight one last thing here. Working with companies to look at greener, more environmentally friendly alternatives to hazardous chemicals and toxic materials. And we're going to be talking about one of those today, aqueous ozone. Mike will be presenting that in the segment after the next, and we're going to have a demonstration of that. So, I'm Dan Marsh, and that's it for me. Any questions? We probably have a couple minutes here.
Your E3s, do you still have openings for E3s this year?
Okay, I didn't mention E3 by name. That's part of the comprehensive assessment we talked about. An E3 is an economy, energy, environment assessment that it's a protocol that's approved by all the federal agencies. So you know, whether it's EPA, OSHA, Department of Labor, Department of Commerce, Department of, and everybody has approved this protocol. We have been doing and conducting these E3s for since 2010, so a number of years. So yes, we do have, to answer Joe's question, we do have funding from US EPA, part of the I-Corps program, to fund 2 E3s at no cost to a facility for this coming year. We have one scheduled from the workshop we held in Collinsville about 3 months ago, and we have one more spot to fill. So if that would be something of interest, maybe we ought to get together and let's see if it's a good fit for your facility. We did conduct an E3 at one of the companies here attending today in the last round of I-Corps, and we're working with them on some of these opportunities as well. So anyway, yes, we do have a spot.